Hey, my name is Mariana. I am a high school student, and I will explain to you the Cold War in a nutshell. First and foremost, the Cold War was a conflict of social, political, ideological, and social nature between two blocks of countries, led by the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. It was developed between 1945 and 1989, and it was developed more as a political and intellectual war. This is actually the reason for naming it Cold War. It never got so heated up to end up in a battlefield, and the conflicts arose after World War II. The United States of America were the leader of the Western Bloc, made up of the capitalist European countries. They defended capitalism as an economic system and liberal democracy as a political system. On the other hand, the Soviet Union headed the so-called Eastern Bloc, made up of the areas under occupation by the Red Army and other communist armed forces. They defended communism as an economic system and popular democracy as a political system. The most important events during this war were the following. In 1945, World War II ends and the conflict known as Cold War begins. In 1949, the United States formed NATO, a major military alliance that had as an objective the mutual support of Allied troops to any investiture of the communist armies. This alliance was formed by the United States, Canada, Portugal, Italy, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, France, and the United Kingdom. In 1955, the USSR created the Warsaw Pact as a counterpart. This was formed by East Germany, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Romania. In 1957, the so-called space race began, leading Yuri Gagarin to be the first man to go to the space and return safely, and leading the US to be the first country to have someone step on the moon. In 1960, both countries had built enough weapons to destroy the world. This was product of their arms race, with the construction of machines of mass destruction. In the year of 1961, the lifting of the Berlin Wall begins, which divided West Germany from East Germany, the eastern sector being controlled by the USSR and the western sector by the United States, France, and Great Britain. Then, in 1962, the missile crisis occurred in Cuba. This was a constant threat to the United States, with the Soviet intention to install military bases and launch missiles in Cuba. Then, in 1963, nuclear weapons tests, both on the surface and underwater, were suspended. Finally, in 1989, the Berlin Wall is finally demolished. This was possibly one of the most iconic and important events in this war. It was shut down by the German citizens themselves after 30 years of being contained and controlled in such an extreme way. Also in 1989, the war ends with the negotiations established by Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev Mikhail. Other important events in which this war played a significant role were the Korean War, Vietnamese War, and the Afghanistan War. In the Korean War, the United States and the United Kingdom were positioned in favor of South Korea, while on the communist side, China and the Soviet Union were important allies of North Korea. In the Vietnamese War, the Southerners were adepts of capitalism, and in contrast, the North Vietnamese were communists. Finally, in the Afghanistan War, the Soviet Union was a major provider of Afghanistan policy and received large amounts of aid, financial assistance, training of military equipment, and military material from the Soviet Union. To end with my very brief but complete explanation, I'll give you a brief summary about what socialism and capitalism are. First, socialism. The main exponents of socialism were Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Their struggle consisted in promoting a political doctrine that promotes social and community ownership of the means of production, as well as their administration by the working class. Their main purpose was building a society devoid of social classes in which equality prevails within the distribution of resources and opportunities. It is also important to say that socialism comes from the bourgeois revolutions and the liberalism born of the French Enlightenment. But it would not be until the 20th century that socialism would embrace a scientific logic. Finally, capitalism. His main exponent was Adam Smith, and it is an economic, social, and political system that is based on private ownership of the means of production, allowing the owners of these means to appropriate the surplus produced by the workers. It arose as a consequence of the rise of the bourgeois as the ruling class in the modern age, especially after the Industrial Revolution, which allowed the emergence of the industrial consumer society. This was all for my explanation. We'll go now with a brief interview.
¿Recuerdas los años en los que sucedió la Guerra Fría?
Eh, Muy poco, porque la Guerra Fría empieza en los años 40, 45, 46. Yo nací en 1962. Cuando están estos sucesos, en realidad yo tenía 18, 17 años, cuando en realidad no está uno tan inmerso en lo que era la Guerra Fría, qué estaba pasando, porque había otras guerras internas, Irak, Irán, otros países que estaban en guerras. Esta prácticamente no fue una guerra de violencia, de armas, fue una guerra de poderío.
¿Quiénes eran los líderes mundiales en esos momentos?
Rusia y Estados Unidos, con sus aliados cada uno. Por un lado Rusia tenía sus aliados que era Polonia, Checoslovaquia, Yugoslavia, Hungría, Rumanía, Alemania Democrática, que de la Segunda Guerra Mundial Rusia y Estados Unidos la dividen. Y Estados Unidos por su lado tenía a Canadá, a Italia, a Francia, a Portugal, al Reino Unido.
¿Afectó esta guerra a México?
En parte porque Estados Unidos es el que gobierna toda Latinoamérica y de alguna manera esos sucesos sí le repercutían a México. México tenía que apoyar a Estados Unidos por conveniencia. En ese entonces los presidentes más bien se aliaban a lo que dijera el presidente de Estados Unidos. ¿Por qué? Porque teníamos un régimen capitalista, no democrático como lo tienen allá en Rusia.
¿Qué tipo de armamento desarrollaban estos países?
Para ese entonces yo recuerdo que se mencionaba mucho que Estados Unidos tenía aviones llamados caza, o eran los F-14, eran aviones supersónicos muy rápidos, pero por otro lado Rusia, tenía los llamados MiG, que eran aviones también supersónicos. Entonces de armamento tenían un armamento tremendo, construyeron mucho armamento. Precisamente para la Segunda Guerra Mundial los dos se unieron y construyeron mucho armamento para venderle a los países, y de ahí siguieron haciendo armamento, bombas nucleares, bombas atómicas, y se abastecieron de mucho armamento los dos.
Finalmente, ¿cuál fue el suceso más importante de esta guerra?
La culminación de la Guerra Fría. ¿Por qué? Porque fue el acuerdo que hace Ronald Reagan con Gorbachev. Presidente de Estados Unidos, presidente de Rusia, llegan a un acuerdo y tiran el muro de Berlín. El muro de Berlín fue un muro que duró durante años, se construyó de la noche a la mañana. Bueno, no se construyó, tardó años en construirse, pero el ejército dividió lo que fue las Alemanias y las familias quedaron separadas de un momento a otro. Duró años el muro de Berlín hasta Gorbachev, con acuerdos, lo derrumbó, lo quitaron. Actualmente queda un poquito, un pedazo del muro de Berlín como monumento histórico, pero desde ese momento familias se volvieron a reencontrar después de años. No podía pasar, hubo muchos muertos queriendo pasar, brincar ese muro, este, y también muertos en ese poderío que ocasionaron Estados Unidos y Rusia. El mejor suceso fue eso, la culminación de la guerra y el quitar el muro de Alemania.
Gracias. First of all, I decided to interview my dad because, well, even though he wasn't born before the Cold War started, he was, well, alive during almost half of the war. And, well, I don't have my grandparents, they passed away some time ago. And my uncles weren't able to do the interview, so this is what I got. My first question was, do you remember the years in which the Cold War took place? And well, he answered that obviously he cannot recall the beginning because he wasn't even born. And well, the other part of it happened while he was a teenager and he wasn't really very conscious of everything that was happening. But he remembered that this was a war that didn't involve a lot of violence. It was more of a power fight between the USA and the USSR. Then my second question was, who were the world leaders at those times? He obviously answered that the United States of America and the USSR. He also mentioned the allies of both these countries, being from the USA, Norway, Denmark, Canada, Portugal, Italy, Holland, France, and the United Kingdom. And he mentions also the allies of the USSR, being East Germany, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Czechoslovakia, and some others. He also mentions the process by which the USSR and the United States divided Germany after the World War II took place. My third question was if this war affected Mexico, and he said that in a small part it did because the United States were the most powerful country in America's continent, and well, we as a smaller country didn't have a lot of opinion or choice within standing back any of those countries and powers. We had obviously to back up the United States, and well, we also had a capitalist regime which basically made us allies from the United States. My fourth question was, what kind of weapons did these countries develop? And well, he answered that he remembered these countries having extremely fast airplanes and war weapons. He also mentioned that since World War II, they both had developed a great amount of arms for selling to other countries, etc. And, well, they started building even more nuclear weapons, such as atomic bombs, and many, many dangerous things. My final question was, which was the most important event of this war? And well, my dad mentioned that the most important event is when the Berlin Wall was finally demolished by the negotiations established by Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev, because even though this wall took a lot of time to build, the separation of both sides of Germany was something that caught everyone by surprise, and it divided many, many families. And well, many people died trying to cross that wall, and it was standing for a large, large amount of time. To be more specific, 30 years. So this event was very important because families could be reunited again. And he also mentioned that till nowadays, a well, many pieces of the Berlin Wall still remain as historical monuments, and to remember all that painful time that Germany went through. That would be all for my video. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you!